It's said that the answer to life, the universe, and everything is 42. Today, I turned 42. I'm sick and dying and didn't think I would even make it this far to this day. But I have. Who knows, I might have a miraculous recovery, but that's very unlikely. And in the end, no one helped me. Nonetheless, I want to do a video today called Before the Universe. Have you ever noticed that in every movie, book, video game, religion and prophecy, they all seem to be telling the same story? It's because they are, and there only ever was one story being retold over and over with a few minor differences here and there. In these stories, every town, character and object of symbolic significance has a name, and those names mean something. That's why you often see the same names across many fictional universes. If you look into it, you will find that any given name of significance in it is a symbolic representation of something in an ancient story. They're all telling the same ancient story. The people who make these stories know what they're doing, and they hide Easter eggs throughout their story that only some people notice. It goes over most people's heads. Why is Link in Zelda called the hero of time? Time? The hero of time? What? And he wields a sword of evil's bane, a sword that only he can pull as the chosen one, pulling the sword from the stone. You might say that sounds like King Arthur and the Excalibur. Why is the city in the Matrix called Zion, the city of the biblical chosen people? Why does Neo die and come back to life, risen from the dead, like a certain historical character, as the digital messiah? To the same music as the Space Baby from 2010, the year we make contact. Every popular story has parallels with many other stories that are intentional and hidden in plain sight, because they are all telling the same story from ancient times. I could go on for many hours. I've done videos on this too of how all these similarities in stories are all telling the same story. Well, of these ancient stories, I want to tell such an ancient story from ancient Greece. Start with the story from ancient Greece, because someone might understand it in connection to what I will say after. I'm just paraphrasing this story from memory, so this is like just the gist of it. I've got so much information here, I can just abbreviate. All the Greek gods, including the strongest of all, Zeus, combined all their powers in an attempt to create a creature stronger than them all as a puppet that would do as they commanded. Sorry for coughing. I'm not well. While combining all their powers together, a phoenix made of fire appeared before them. To their horror, the firebird didn't obey their commands and it was sentient. In fear of its power, they tried to kill it, but it was immune to all their weapons. So they trapped it in the cage. But then it vanished and escaped the cage, never to be seen again. I think it just flew through the walls of the cage or the bars of the cage, then disappeared. I think it was, yeah. Never to be seen again. 1,000 years later, the phoenix appears, it finds a woman in Tartarus, which is basically hell. The deepest place in hell. The phoenix had pity on the woman and protected her with a giant blue shield for miles around her. But the shield inadvertently woke up the dead in Tartarus that was in the range of the shield. Upon waking up and finding themselves in Tartarus, the deepest place of hell, they saw a horde of demons rushing them from the distance. and the dead were frozen with fear after finding out where they'd woken up in the deepest part of hell, Tartarus, with all these demons rushing them. The Phoenix took them to the exit of Tartarus, maintaining the shield to keep them alive and protect them and the woman from the demons, while the Phoenix itself stayed in Tartarus, sacrificing itself as the demons rushed it, so that they could escape. The Phoenix is an ancient representation of the same hero told in every story. Even biblical prophecies refer to the expected hero as a phoenix, a firebird, and a bird of prey coming from the east. Nostradamus said the same thing. Some even call this bird the Thunderbird, instead of a firebird or a thunderbird. There's a TV show called The Thunderbirds and an email client called Mozilla Thunderbird. And hopefully by now you get the point. This isn't by accident. This is in every corner of the world. Everything that is named of any kind of importance or relevance is named after something of significance in this ancient story. This one ancient story has been retold over and over with different changes here and there. Usually a direct reference to the mysterious hero from beyond time, space, and the universe. Go look at any popular fictional universe. Look at the names of the main characters and the names of the key objects of significance. Look up their etymology and what these words actually mean. And they actually mean something, and you'll see a story within a story hidden in plain sight. They're all telling the same story. Yeah, if you've never noticed any of this stuff before, you're probably going to think that what I'm saying is completely crazy. But I'm hoping that anyone who listens to this video will at least be able to be aware, at least to some degree, that this is going on. Like this, people don't just tell stories for no reason. There's a story within the story. That's the whole point. It's like art, when there's hidden messages in art, and this is a primary way that people say things that normally cannot be said directly for fear of persecution, or to only make certain people who are wise enough only to tell them, to keep it hidden from the stupid and the unworthy. This has been going on since the dawn of civilization. These tactics, this reason why people do this. So, this is where I want to share an ancient forgotten story about before the universe. There's a lot of these stories, but this is a very ancient one. I'm going to paraphrase here too, because this is a really old story. There's many of them that most people have no idea about all these ancient stories. A lot of this stuff's being covered up too. Tons of stuff. More than you can imagine. Like over the 1,000 years of the Dark Ages, a lot of shit was destroyed. But some of it has survived. But anyway, this is an ancient story. And whether it's true or not isn't really the point. The point is in the lessons learned from the example of the story. But maybe it is true. Who are you to say with confidence that it isn't? The story goes like this. And again, I'm just paraphrasing a very old forgotten story. Perhaps older than time itself. Time as you understand it, at least. So here's the story. Take it as a story, okay? Maybe true, maybe not. Maybe you should look into it, because these stories don't exist without a reason. So once upon a time, this is just me paraphrasing here. Once upon a time, there was a wise old man dressed in a white robe that was always ruffled like shadows and light, as if it was in a perpetual wind. His form constantly coming into and out of view at the same time. Kind of like paradoxical kind of appearance. You couldn't focus your eyes on him properly, because his appearance was always constantly changing phasing in and out at the same time. The wise old man built a garden, and in that garden he created about 12 immortal children. Over time, the children learned how to interact with each other. But as immortal and powerful as they were, they still had the minds of children. They spontaneously argued and fought, cried and complained over the silliest things, and the old man patiently tried to mediate between them. He never judged them or took sides. He was neutral to a fault and refused to judge. He just tried to stop them arguing. As much as the children argued with each other, the next moment they might be defending the target of their tantrum against a new target of a new tantrum. Loyalties changed by the moment as the children played in the garden. Over time, the children matured as they learned how to live in peace with each other and not be so silly. The children would constantly come to the wise old man, but he was no longer spending all his time with them. He was away most of the time, to the point where he made a part of the garden where the children could summon him from when they needed him. But they only abused it and never stopped bothering him, just summoning him over and over and over, constantly, for silly reasons or no reason at all, just to speak to him. As he became increasingly frustrated with them and their petty childish tantrums, and he became increasingly frustrated with them and their petty childish tantrums. The children were male and female, not quite human, but bipedal and wearing elaborate armor with the appearance of gemstones and metal, like an archangel equipped for war. Each very different and unique in both appearance and personality. The children spoke among themselves about why they were created in such a way, and the old man would never tell them, but there was a reason why. They're each very different and unique in both appearance and personality. Among the children was the quiet one, the defender. He was often an outsider compared to the others, since he refused to take part in their silly games. The defender had principles and morals that the others didn't. He had a depth of understanding the others couldn't see, and so he kept it largely to himself to avoid more fighting. He tried to intervene at times, but only sometimes they would listen. They would just get angry with him and accuse him of trying to be the leader, while they fought over who was boss. There was also the twins, one slightly taller than the other, but otherwise almost identical. Everyone else looked different, but these two looked almost identical. They never left each other's side and spent most of their time doing their own thing. For a long time, they were considered to be the strongest, but no one could agree on which one was stronger, even as they endlessly talked about it. Eventually, they would proudly patrol the garden as peacekeepers, wielding spears they somehow convinced the old man to give them. The defender thought it was silly and sometimes made fun of them, which only caused them to get upset and take their guard dog role even more seriously. I'd go and do a patrol for the trouble. A double patrol. One of the children had a dark side. He always explored the worst possibilities and always took it too far. He lied, cheated, and broke the rules in order to win. But his heart wasn't all evil. It was just curiosity that went too far in the wrong direction without someone else to guide him. The defender tried to guide him, and they became close but very different, opposite in many ways. The defender and the dark one were like the new twins. The dark one considered himself a rival of the defender who was just trying to help him and stop him from losing his way. But the dark one only drifted further into dark places. After a time of peace, the argument started again, and this time they were more serious. The children would not stop summoning the old man over and over until he banned them from doing it and named the defender as the only one, as the spokesman who could summon him on their behalf, and only when it's very important. The other children got very jealous of that, and their fighting only got much worse, especially against the defender. The defender tried talking to the old man after trying everything he could to stop them. But the old man, who was once so patient and kind, was now frustrated and bitter at being constantly summoned, and threatened to ban even the defender from summoning him. So the defender stopped summoning him too. Tried his best to reason with the other children, but they wouldn't listen to him, since they were all united against him out of jealousy for being chosen as the only spokesman, even as they fought each other. The fighting became so bad that the children protested by vandalizing the garden and destroying their own playground. Eventually, the old man came, saw what they had done, and went into a rage at what they had done to his garden. He directed his anger at the defender, and the defender said that he tried to fix it but couldn't, and tried to tell him as a last resort, but he wouldn't even listen and told him off. The old man came to realize his mistake, his own negligence of his own creation. He tried to make it right by spending time with the children and balancing out their arguments. He also fixed the damage they did to the garden, but said it would never be like it was before, that the damage was done, and if it happened again, the garden itself would not be fixable, and if it happened, the garden would be destroyed, which would also destroy them, the children, too. As it turns out, the only reason the children really fought was simply because of boredom. An eternity in a little garden with nothing to keep them occupied but each other. They played war to entertain themselves. They came to realize that they didn't really hate each other, and so the fighting and bitter rivalry stopped. The old man explained that he was very busy working on something, and couldn't be there for them as he once was. They had to figure some things out for themselves, but the old man wouldn't tell the children what he was working on, or even where he was going. All the fighting and even the destruction of the garden was really just to get the old man to come and spend time with them. But they had to stop being children and learn how to solve their own problems. The old man said that was why he made the number of children he did, and made them so different, so that they would learn and mature from interacting with each other in all their differences. After that, the garden was finally at peace and the children started growing up. Having explored every possibility and idea they could think of, it was proposed they do a series of competitions and battles, games, to find out who was the strongest. In memory of the problems in the past, many of the children were wary of going there again. Most of all, the defender. But some of the children began cautiously organizing games, and others joined in until only the defender wasn't part of it. The defender wasn't interested enough in finding out who was the strongest and considered the risk not worth it. And he didn't have pride like some of the other children did. The defender chose introspection instead, while the other children weren't interested in. The games they made came to be more elaborate over time, and not a shred of bitterness ever happened. They were all having fun and learning at the same time, and even the defender came to watch. And then the duels began. One-on-one, the children would fight each other. Being immortal, there was no way to win or lose unless one could get the other in a position of yielding. All kinds of tactics were involved, but the greatest of which was to pin the other in an awkward position and hold them there until they give up. It came to be an accepted standard that when one was pinned in such a way, they would give up immediately and not waste any more time dragging it out. But the Dark One refused to yield. Being immortal and patient, whenever he was pinned, he would simply not give up and wait it out no matter how long it took. At first, the twins were the favourites, and the shorter one came to be recognised as the strongest of the two. But after the Dark One refused to yield, no one knew how to defeat an immortal that refused to yield. You just can't win. It's impossible. And so he came to be considered the strongest, to the amazement of the other children. They even convinced the Defender to join in with the drills, and he came to show strength and resolve to match the Dark One, defeating all the others easily. Only the Defender played by the agreed rules of accepting defeat when pinned, while the Dark One didn't. That gave the Dark One an edge because he would not yield. But the Defender was playing by rules where he could yield. But the Defender was able to break out of impossible positions and fought with unmatched skill. In fact, they did a series of drills, not just one. But the last one was very long. The Defender tried to... There was the Settler, the ultimate victory duel. The Defender tried to teach them how he did what he did, that it involved ideas, introspection, and discipline. That what he had came from realizations he made from within in the time that he spent by himself. That the others could also learn. But they weren't interested in learning. They wanted to see the Defender and the Dark One meet in the ultimate duel to find out which one was stronger. The Dark One was the favourite, since he would never yield, but the Defender, knowing introspection and how to train his own mind, used that to train the Dark One in their long battle. They fought and fought. Each time the Defender pinned the Dark One would wait it out for a moment. The Defender loosened his grip enough to break free, and on the rare occasion the Dark One got lucky and pinned the Defender, and the Defender would break free with brute force or outwitting the Dark One. This went on over and over for a long time, so long that the other children would come and go. Usually the Defender would pin the Dark One. Sometimes the Dark One would pin the Defender. But the Dark One didn't realize that the Defender was changing and training the Dark One's own mind as they battled on a level the Dark One wasn't aware of. And after realizing that his every move was now a predictable move orchestrated by the Defender, the Dark One finally yielded for the first time ever, knowing that they would both fight forever, and he would lose over and over now, every time forever, until he yielded. Deep down, the Defender got to the real reason why the Dark One never yielded, which was pride. By defeating his pride and using it against him, the Dark One lost his reason to fight. And so the Defender was crowned champion, the strongest of them all, a title he didn't even want. He just wanted to show them how he had learned, what he had learned, that they could do it too, but it was just too much effort for them to bother. After that, the children sought new things to do. The twins came to the other children, telling stories about how they left the garden despite the old man advising them not to. There was a space of nothingness on the outside, a void, where the children could go in a strange place without any form. They could exist there in a disembodied state and return at will. The twins learned that while the space seemed empty, there was something in it that couldn't be seen, and they learned ways to use it to conjure an interactive environment and form to conjure their own body and even objects at will, and how to temporarily maintain the form they created. In the empty space outside the garden, the children could conjure up anything they could imagine and play in a world of new games. Even more duels with elaborate weapons, mechanics and rules, this time with destructible bodies that they could respawn at will. They took other children out into the void and showed them how to do it, until they were all spending most of their time playing games out in the void, the empty space. All but one, the defender. He refused to go, not just because the old man asked them not to, but because he considered it dangerous and that they all, including him, needed to learn and introspect before going out into the void, or they risk becoming corrupted by it. It's on the idea of if you have nothing adequately guiding you, your imagination and random exploration of ideas can go down a dark path without you realizing it. And you roll a dice too many times, you come up with a wrong number too many times, you can get to the point of no return. You go down a path of corruption. After a long time, the defender spent most of his time lonely in the garden while the other children played in the void beyond. They would come and encourage him to try it, but he always refused and wasn't ready for it yet. But eventually the twins took him out for one time only, just so he could see what they were on about. They showed the defender how to create an environment and form out of the unseen stuff, and he learned how to conjure from it as they did. They showed him a simple example of how they dueled there, and he did a simple test duel, blow for blow, with one of them, to try it out. But as strange and interesting as it was, the defender said that it wasn't really real, just a conjuration of their own imagination. They kind of had a counter argument that, this is being conjured by unseen stuff that is real but unseen, so it's kind of real. But the defender argued that the moment they left, it would all vanish. Maybe the unseen stuff is real, whatever it may be, but the conjuration and form wasn't really real. While they played with the possibilities of their imagination, the defender wanted to play with the possibilities of what's real and the exploration of what's real. He wanted to discover what's real, while they would deliberately indulge in things they knew were not real. But he didn't rule out the value in what they were doing, just that there were more important things to figure out before that. And that until those things are figured out, conjuring in the void was a dangerous game. After all this, the old man came to meet the children, but they were all gone. They were all out in the void playing, as always. He told the defender to let the other children know he had something important to tell them, and to wait in the garden until they all returned. And so they did, and the old man came to tell them. He said that all this time he was away, he was working very hard on something that needed his constant attention. As it turns out, he built a generator that uses the unseen stuff in the very void the children were playing in, and used it as a factory to convert chaos in such a way that it's self-generating and self-multiplying in an enclosed loop that feeds itself and turns into form, or manifest form. While he didn't make it for the children, and his reasons for doing so he wouldn't say, he still offered it to the children as a new playground with so much space that they would never get bored with it. The children went into the new playground, each to their own place, far, far away from each other. What you would call the universe, or perhaps multiverse. The old man gave them some tips on how to interact with it, and left them to do as they pleased. The automated processes in the playground came to spawn life, and the children played with it and influenced it. All the children spent almost all of their time in the new playground, except the defender. He had more to learn and didn't consider himself ready to interact or even worthy to interact with the life in the new playground. He wanted to see how the other children went first, and he wanted to learn more first. He spent long periods alone in the garden and put himself into a cold, long sleep where he would wake up when one of the other children returned after a very long time. On the rare occasion, one of the children would return for a short time. Even rarer, more than one would meet in the garden to talk about what they had been up to. During such a meeting, two of the female children were in the garden with the defender, talking to each other about their experiences in the playground. It seemed that they were all playing the role of a god, influencing the life in all kinds of ways for better or worse, as immortal creatures of great power, yet with the minds and morals of spoiled children. One of them spoke of how they were doing so well influencing a species on the world, and then she went away for a short time and they destroyed themselves. Suddenly destroyed themselves. It just all suddenly went wrong. The other laughed at how she sabotaged a world she guided for a long time. Not sure. The defender was horrified. He wanted to go into the playground and stop what all the other children were doing. He came to find out what they were doing, and then the Dark One told him of an evil plan he had devised. He was cultivating purity, innocence, and beauty, and also growing the greatest evil he could imagine, and then setting that evil onto the innocent in their vulnerability to cause as much harm, defacement, and sabotage as his imagination could conjure up. And he even laughed when he spoke of his plan and what he had already done. He tried to justify it as the exploration of all possibilities, but since he laughed so hard about it, the defender didn't believe a word of it. The defender went to the old man about it, but the old man refused to intervene or even judge him for it, eventually telling them that he has to figure it out on his own and refusing to respond to being summoned altogether. The defender returned to the Dark One and confronted him yet again, pleading with him to stop. But the Dark One insisted and laughed as he said no one can stop him. So the defender did what had to be done. He killed his own brother with his own hands and all his strength. He killed another immortal. He killed the unkillable. As the Dark One's body lay there, other children from the garden came and saw what the defender did. They were horrified, and then some became angry and stood against the defender. The defender said he did what had to be done as a last resort to prevent him from going through this evil plan upon the innocent and vulnerable. The defender begged them to put him on trial and see if he was right or wrong in what he did, but they all went silent and none dared to judge him, not even the old man who wouldn't appear anymore. The defender tried summoning the old man over and over, but he wouldn't appear. He eventually said that he will find him and he will judge him himself. He will find out every little secret of why he's done what he's done and judge him himself. He then came up to the Dark One's corpse and told the other children that he doesn't condemn the Dark One, that he did it because he had to. That he was a brother and there was good in him. That this was an example of the corruption he warned about for playing games in the void unprepared. That they were once close, like the twins, and tried everything he could to save the Dark One from going down this path. Neither the old man nor the other children would judge or help or intervene in any way. As the Dark One's dead body lay on the ground, the Defender decided to go into the remnants of the Dark One's fading mind, in an effort to somehow save any good he could, sacrificing his own life if needs be to revive any good from within the Dark One, if he was able, and then finally go to the universe for the first time, and learn how to influence it like the other children did, to protect the victims of the Dark One's evil plan. And then hold the other children to account and protect their victims too. And then at the end of all things, find a way to confront the old man himself and force him to explain himself for letting it all happen and doing nothing. And so the Defender became a mediator and judge between men and so-called gods who refuse to judge him, as he tries to find a way to preserve and revive all of the good that came to life, at the cost of his own life if he must. This is not the whole story, but this is like the first part of this story of an ancient story of before the universe. Just thought I would share that story. Remember, all stories they're all copied from ancient stories, and all these ancient stories come from an even more ancient story. And all the similarities and parallels, they exist for a reason. So make what you will of this. I was reading this story from text, as you could probably tell. I'm not just saying this, I'm reading it from text. Make of this story as you will. I won't say where I found this story, but it's a story nonetheless to consider. I thought I'd share this story on my 42nd birthday of the magic number 42. Alright, that's it.